Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Monday night, so we're going to start Parsha. It's about Parsha's Beshalach, which has a lot of very interesting things in the Parsha. At the beginning of the Parsha, it says, the first pasuk begins with, Vayhi Beshalach Pari Sa'am, Pari sent the nation. And then again it says, Pen Yinochim Ha'am, that's the nation. And then it says, Hashem made the nation go around in a roundabout way. So 3 times in the first 2 psukim, the Torah calls the word Ha'am, the nation, and then it says V'chamushim olu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. Simply means, Rashi says, that the people went out armed. When they left Egypt, they went out armed from Egypt. Another interpretation, Rashi says, V'chamushim means 1/5 of the Jewish people left Egypt. 4/5 died in the plague of darkness. 1/5 of the Jewish people went out. This is the simple meaning of the pasuk. So the Kli Yakar, one of the very great commentaries, says an interesting point, and he says the first 3 times the Torah calls it Ha'am, the nation, Beshalach Paras Ha'am, Le'nochem Lakim Es Ha'am, Vayatzev Lakim Es Ha'am. Then finally, in the 4th time, they're called Chamushim Olu B'nei Yisrael. Then they were called the Bnei Yisrael, then they were called the Jews. So the Kli Yakar explains a very interesting point. Ha'am in Chumash, the nation, most of the time in Chumash refers to the Erev Rav, the mixed crowd of Egyptians that just went out with the Jews. They were all the troublemakers in the 40 years came about from those Egyptians that Moshe Rabbeinu let them come along from when the Yidden left Egypt. So he says like this, Chamushim, the Kli Yakar says, means armed. But what is the armory of a Jew? Torah. What protects a Jew? The Gemara says, Torah Magino Matzlah. Torah protects a Jew. Chamushim also comes to the word Chumash. Why is the Torah called Chumash? Because Chumash means 5, and there's 5 books in Chumash. So it's called, but it's the same word as Chamushim, armed. It's the same root. It's the same word as armed, armed as in fighting the battle, plus a level of Chumash, which is the 5 books of Chumash. So he says, once the Jews got V'chamushim, once they got the Chumash, then they're Olu B'nai Yisrael. They elevated to a level of B'nai Yisrael. Until they got the Torah, they're called Ha'am. They're a nation like any other nation. When the Jews, V'chamushim Olu B'nai Yisrael, once they had the Chumash, they had the Torah, they had this additional protection, because it also means armed. So then they elevated themselves to a stage of a state of B'nai Yisrael. Then they became full-fledged Jews. Because Torah and Jews and Hashem are all one. Jews without Torah are nothing. Torah without Jews are nothing. And everybody has each other. And that's why the Torah uses the word B'nai Yisrael after the word Chamushim. That's number one. There's just a few short things before we go into the heavy-duty stuff. The pasuk says in chapter 13, pasuk 19, Vayikach Moshe atzmes Yosef imei. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he left Egypt, took out the bones of Yosef. Okay? And by the way, the Medrash says the bones of all the Shvatim, all the tribes went out with them. Each tribe took out their Reuven's children, great-grandchildren, whatever, took out Reuven's bones and Shimon. But Moshe Rabbeinu took out Yosef's bones from Egypt. Why? Because he said, the pasuk says, Yosef Tzaddik made the Jews swear that when you go out of Mitzrayim, I want you to take my bones with me. Okay, that's fine. How we got it, we learned last week. I think we mentioned briefly last week that he either went to the Nile River, and then he said, Yosef, first he didn't know where the bones were. So he went to Sarah Bas Asher, who was the oldest woman alive in that generation. Says, where is Yosef? She told him 2 opinions. One, that they buried him in the Nile, or in a royal cemetery. So anyway, Moshe Rabbeinu went there, and the bones showed themselves, and Moshe Rabbeinu took the bones. Okay? What? No, one, and the Gemara says he just came to the Nile and says, okay, it's time to go. But the Medrash says he wrote not on a paper, on a plaque, Ali Shor. short, come up. Yosef is called Bechor Shoro. Yosef likened to an ox. In the Pasuk in Vayechi says Yosef is called an ox. So Moshe Rabbeinu wrote on a plaque, Ali Shor, shor, come up. And when he put it into the Nile, that caused Yosef's coffin to come up. And the guys, the troublemakers that eventually made the golden calf, took that placket, which had Moshe Rabbeinu's writing on it, and when they wanted to make the golden calf, and Aaron threw the gold into the fire, they put that plaque in it. The troublemakers threw the plaque into the fire, and that's why the baby calf, the baby shor, the egel, came out because of that holy plaque that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. But the question is, the Mefarshim, as the Rebbe says it also, the question is, Atmas Yosef means the bones of Yosef. It's not a nice expression. He took out the remains of Yosef, he took out the coffin of Yosef. The bones, like bones means, it disintegrated and it's a skeleton, and he took the bones out. Why is the Torah using a word that's not very nice? Tzaddikim don't rot in the ground anyway, but why does it say Atzmas Yosef, the bones of Yosef? It's not a nice term. So the Rebbe explains that Atzmas means bones, but Etzem also means the essence. The Etzem of something means the bone, because the bone is really the essence of the person. A person deteriorates in the ground, but the bones are still there. The skeleton is still there. So it says, Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not speaking about he took out the bones of Yosef. It means Moshe Rabbeinu took out the essence of what Yosef was. When he left Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu took the essence of Yosef. What was the essence of Yosef? Now, Yosef was called Yosef earlier on in the Torah because Rachel said she knew that there were going to be 12 tribes, and she knew there was 11 already, and she knew that there's only going to be one more. So when Yosef was born, she named him Yosef Hashem Li Bein Acher. Simply it means God should give me another child. Yosef Hashem Li, God should add to me Bein Acher, another child. But the Tzemach Tzedek said that what does it mean, Bein Acher? It means what was the essence of Yosef, what Rachel wanted from Yosef? Acher means a foreigner, somebody else, outside, external. Ben is a son. She said, what was the role and function of Yosef HaTzadik? That he should make Ben Acher, doesn't only mean another child, it means he should make a child out of the Acher, out of the foreigner. He should make a child out of the foreigner, meaning a person who's far away from Yiddishkeit. A child represents closeness. When you say the Jews are children of Hashem, Banim Matam Lashem Alakechem, it refers to the neshama of the Jew. The neshama is close to Hashem. Okay, it's a part of Hashem. So what was Yosef's function? Yosef's function was to make from a ben, to make a ben from an acher. Transform somebody far from Yiddishkeit to make him closer to Yiddishkeit. And that's why in the battle of Amalek, that Amalek at the end of the Parsha deals with the Jews fighting Amalek. Who fought Amalek? Moshe Rabbeinu was told to send Yehoshua, in this week's Parsha at the end, tell Yeshua, right, Moshe Rabbeinu's student, choose men and let's go fight Amalek. Yeshua was a descendant of Yosef. Esav represents Acher, foreigners, foreign to Yiddishkeit, against Yiddishkeit. Esav represents evil, the evil powers. So Yeshua had to fight Amalek because Amalek was a descendant of Esav, and Yehoshua came from Ephraim, which was Yosef's son. So therefore, it needed to have Yehoshua, who was from Yosef, to fight the evil of Amalek. And that's what it means. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't take out the bones of Yosef. It means he took out the essence of Yosef. What Yosef personified, what Yosef meant, was to make from the stranger into into a godly thing. Okay, another thing in the Parsha later on, in Parak Yudalid, Pasuk Yudalid, chapter 14, Pasuk 14, it says like this. The Jews, if we have enough time, later we'll talk about this. But the Jews come to the Yam Suf. Okay, just picture the scenario. The Jews are running away from Egypt. Paro is chasing them. They come to the water, right? The sea. There's nowhere to go. The Egyptians are behind them. The Jews are at a loss what to do. So it says, and Rashi brings down from the Medrash, there's more details. There are actually four groups. We'll see if we have time later. But the Jews started davening to Hashem. The Jews started praying to Hashem, help, We got a sea in front of us. There's the Egyptians behind us, nowhere to go. Finally, Nachshon, this, I'm not saying in a bad way, this crazy guy, jumped into the sea, and it split. Okay? But what does the pasuk say over here? Hashem yilochem lachem. Hashem will fight for you. V'atem tachrishin, and you be silent. So the Zohar asks the question, there's a biblical mitzvah for a Jew to daven. If you're in a need, if you have a need, you have a biblical, according to all opinions, whether davening 3 times a day is biblical, rabbinic, there's arguments, different opinions, whatever. But everybody says if a person is in a dire situation, they have a biblical mitzvah to daven. And that's what the Jews were doing. Why does Hashem tell them be quiet? Hashem yilochem lachem, v'atem tachrishin, be quiet. So the Zohar says a remarkable concept. The Zohar says there comes a time Hashem says, just be quiet. I don't need even davening. Don't daven. Don't, as he say in Yiddish, don't hack me a chainik. Don't tell me, don't stop bugging me. Leave go. I'm here. I'm going to save you. Just stop bugging me. Just be quiet. And that silence, the Zohar says, at this time when Hashem said to him, Atum tachrishin, you guys be silent. I don't want you to pray. Because the silence, which is basically showing that Hashem is in control, and Hashem is promising it's going to be good, Hashem is telling him, you know what? Just be silent.
Is it a bitachon thing?
Bitachon, trust, emunah, bitachon, just be quiet.
He's saying basically you have no merit to pray at this point?
No, that's not true. The Jews had merits.
So that's not merit.
No, the Zohar says it comes a time a person is just supposed to be quiet and say, Hashem, I'm in your hands. That's it. Sometimes, when you ask for too much, you get in the way. Sometimes sometimes somebody will be asking for a lot of things. You say to him, you're making it worse, just be quiet. You don't know what you have to ask for. Even in davening, it says in Sfarim that a Jew should really daven to Hashem, that we should even know what to ask for. That's also something. Sometimes you can ask for the most stupid things. You have an opportunity to ask who knows what from Hashem, and all of a sudden a person decides that's something stupid. You have to know sometimes just be quiet. Hashem says to them, just be quiet. And by the way, this was when Nachshon and Aminadav jumped in, because what did Hashem say? Why are you crying to me? Just go. Just go. There's a remarkable concept over here. There's a remarkable concept. This part of the Parsha, the Jews are faced in a battle with Egypt. Okay? At the end of the Parsha with Amalek, Amalek is coming to them. Hashem doesn't say, be quiet, I'll take care of it. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, say, Hilochem b'Amalek, go fight. Here the Jews wanted to fight. Hashem said to them, no, Hashem yilochem lachem. Hashem's going to fight for you. Why? At the beginning of the parsha, when Mitzrayim is coming to fight, Hashem says to the Jews, be quiet, I'm taking care of it. At the end of the parsha, when it comes to Amalek, Hashem says, go fight them. What's the difference? And the Rebbe explains such an important life lesson. Egypt is coming behind them. The Jews are traveling, and Egypt is chasing them. Egyptians represent our past. Amalek is coming towards us. That represents the future. Hashem says to the Jewish people, such an important lesson in life. Many times, people have a past, whatever the past may be. And they start harping on the past. And they start digging into the mud. Like Freud said, if you dig deep enough in a person, you're going to find mud. Okay? So what is that concept? They say, I have to deal with my past. Today, even therapy. You go to therapists. Yeah, many of them will tell you, well, let's talk about your past. And you stop harping on the past with all the garbage and schmutz and filth and, who knows what. And they start dealing with it. The Torah here says a whole different perspective on life. Hashem says, Egyptians are coming from behind. Don't deal with it. Forget it. It's behind you. Forget it. Don't deal with it. Don't entertain it. Okay? Freud said, the deeper you dig in a person, you're going to find mud. And the Baal Shem Tov said, a Jew is a treasure, treasured land. The more you dig in the land, you're going to find gold and diamonds. Okay? And precious stones. So don't harp on the past. But the future, Amalek, the Jews are about to go to Matan Torah. The Jews are about to go get the Torah. And Amalek is coming to fight. That Hashem says, no, that you have to fight. The future, you have to fight for the future. The past, forget about it. Hashem will deal with it. Hashem yilochem lochem v'atem tacharishin. Don't deal with the past. No, it's a remarkable thing. Just in life, therapy, it's an unbelievable concept of therapy. Don't harp on the past. The past is gone. You're not going to redo it. All you're going to get through the past is blocked for the future. So forget the past and just move on. But the Zohar says, Atem tachrishun, there comes a time, even about the past. Again, the Zohar is saying, just forget about it. Silent. Don't dig into it. Just move on. And that's what Hashem said right afterward. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, David al why are you crying to me? Okay? And Moshe Rabbeinu, Rashi says, was davening. Moshe Rabbeinu was at this time davening to Hashem, help. And Hashem says, why are you davening? Just move, which is another remarkable lesson. In life, there's a future ahead of us, and we're overwhelmed by the future. Right? Sometimes it's overwhelming. Oh, how am I going to do it? You know what Hashem says to us? Just go do it. Just do it. One step at a time, you will conquer the future. My uncle is still alive, Baruch Hashem, but he was one of the Rebbe's secretaries and did a lot of, he drove the Rebbe to the oil, and he was the PR man for Lubavitch, okay? He still is. So when he first started, he told the story, when he started to first work for the Rebbe, when the Rebbe edited papers, whatever the Rebbe edited, the Rebbe would write all over the place with arrows and lines. It was like you looked at the paper, they still have some of those printed, just to show. It's like underlined with arrows and this. It's mind-blowing. So when the Rebbe gave my uncle the first paper to work on, with all those things, my uncle looked overwhelmed. And the Rebbe said to him, no, just take it easy. Do one line at a time. Do one line at a time, and you'll get it. And he said he learned a life lesson from that. When you're faced with the future, and the future could be overwhelming, just take one step at a time, just do it. And you see what happens. There's two, I always tell people, there's two people. One guy wakes up in the morning, I have a million things to do today. I have a million things to do. A whole day he's kvetching, I have a million things to do today. And they do nothing. Another guy wakes up, I have a million things to do. Let's start. They start doing one thing at a time. By noon, they're done. and they have a whole day free. That's the attitude. The past, forget about. The future, you have to fight, but one step at a time. So just move on, and you'll see that all the difficulties will fly away. Okay, another remarkable thing is a medrash. In Parak Yudalid, chapter 14, Pasuk 31. Here. It says, the Jews saw the big hand of what Hashem did in Mitzrayim. They feared God. This is what the pasuk says. They believed in God and in Moshe, his servant.
Before that, they did it?
No, they didn't do it. At this moment, when they saw the miracles of God, but it's very interesting to preface the question, to explain it properly. In Shemon Esrei, the third bracha says, Ata Kodesh, V'Shimcha Kodesh. You're holy, your name is holy, and the holy ones every day praise you. Right? The third bracha of the Shemon Esrei. Why do we say, Ata Kodesh, you're holy, and your name is holy? Why don't we just say you and your name are holy? Davening would be one word less, so we go quicker. Why do we say you are holy and your name is holy? Why don't we just say you and your name are holy? So the commentaries, the simple meaning in davening is because God is holier than his name is. If you say you and your name are holy, that means God, you and your name are the same level of holiness. So we say you're holy, it's one level of Kedusha, and your name is also holy, but it's not the same level of Kedusha. The pasuk over here should have said, Vayaminu b'Hashem, Vayaminu b'Moshe. They believed in God and they believed in Moshe. The Torah says, interesting, the Torah says they believed in Hashem and in Moshe, as if it's the same level of belief. Why is the Torah saying that? Yeah, Moshe, your servant. Yeah, but I'm saying it doesn't say they believed in God and they believed in Moshe, your servant. It implies that the belief in Hashem and the belief in Moshe Rabbeinu is the same level of Emunah. So there's a remarkable medrash. The Mechilta says, on this pasuk, it says, what does it mean? And the medrash says, it's not even Chassidus, it's medrash. The medrash says, in order to believe in God, you have to believe in Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore it's the same level of belief. In order to believe in God, this is what the Medrash says. In order to have Vayaminu b'Hashem, in order to believe in God, you need to have Emunah u'b'Moshe Avda, you need to believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. And without believing in Moshe Rabbeinu, the Medrash says, you cannot really fully believe in Hashem. Okay, yeah, it's easier said than done. But why? Why is that? Why is the Emunah of Hashem coming through believing in Moshe Rabbeinu? Because, just Moshe Rabbeinu himself. The role of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe explains in the famous Vata Tetzav, we learned this many times by the different classes. The Rebbe explains in the Maimah Vata Tetzav that in order to be able to believe in Hashem, okay, let's put it this way. The pasuk says earlier in Shemai, Vayamin ha'am. The Jews believed. The Gemara says, the Medrash says, Jews are maminim b'nei ma'aminim. They're believers, the children of believers. Jews are believers. We said many times, somebody once told the Rebbe, I'm not a believer. The Rebbe said, the fact that you say you're a believer doesn't contradict the fact that you do believe. Because the Torah says you believe. Your neshama is there, it believes. You're saying you don't believe, you're a liar. I mean, because you do believe. You want to choose to not believe. But you do believe, because every Jew is a believer. But the emunah of a Jew without Moshe Rabbeinu, the emunah of a Jew without Moshe Rabbeinu could be very superficial. It could be very, very superficial. What does it mean? Why is it superficial? Again, we learned this recently, in fact, but this is where the source of it, because the emunah of the Jew could be in a way that it doesn't affect the person. The Gemara says in Brachas, we learned this. The Gemara says, Ganva apum machtarta rachmana karya, which means Aramaic for when a ganef, a thief, is about to break into a house, he davens to Hashem that he should be successful. Now, what is the Gemara telling me? The Gemara is telling me a ganef trick. I mean, that how to be a thief, daven to Hashem, you'll be successful in your thief. I mean, what's the Gemara telling us? The Gemara is telling us a phenomenal concept. This thief obviously believes in Hashem because he's davening. If he doesn't believe in Hashem, why is he davening? Right? Okay, so he believes in Hashem. Yet, he knows that God says don't steal. I mean, it's all over Chumash, don't steal. Okay, the 10 Commandments is don't kidnap. But still, don't steal is don't steal. Everybody knows it's one of the 7 Noahide laws. You can't steal. So he knows he's going against God, yet he believes in Hashem and he's davening to Hashem to be successful in something Hashem doesn't want him to do. So what's the explanation? So Chassidus explains, because the person believes, but it's superficial. It doesn't affect his day-to-day living. Every religious Jew, believe it or not, once a year does a little thing sin. If not, what would you do on Yom Kippur, right? You have to have a little sin. Now ask the person at the time they're sinning. They know they're sinning. Yes, you believe in God? What do you do? It's a smack you in the face. Of course I believe in Hashem. So why are you doing something Hashem doesn't tell you to do, doesn't want you to do? Or why aren't you doing something Hashem wants you to do? The answer is, the belief doesn't affect me. It's superficial. Of course I believe in Hashem. But the real emunah, real belief, is when it affects the person 24/7, that every part of his body is permeated with that belief that Hashem exists, and that's all that exists. And Hashem is watching over me every time for everything I do wrong or right. So you need to internalize that emunah. What is the role of Moshe Rabbeinu? What Moshe Rabbeinu is called in the Zohar, Aramaic for Roya Nemon. Raya Mehemna means either a faithful shepherd or a shepherd of faith. And the Rebbe explains the real interpretation of Raya Mehemna means Moshe Rabbeinu. What do you mean a shepherd of faith? What does a shepherd do? He feeds the flock. Moshe Rabbeinu feeds the Jews the emunah. What do you mean he feeds the Jews the emunah? When you eat something, you digest it internally. The emunah, which is superficial, which doesn't affect us day-to-day living, it's there, we believe, we daven, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day living. What a Rebbe's function is to internalize that level of emunah and das, which means feeling, not knowing God, feeling godliness, to be internalized within the person, and then the person lives with emunah. And this explains why, vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'meisha avdei, if you want to have the real internalized belief in Hashem, it has to come through the Moshe Rabbeinu, who internalizes within each one of us the emunah and bitachon, which is superficial.
Like Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were at their time, then Moshe Rabbeinu at their time?
Yeah, to a certain extent. They were the leaders, the shepherds, they were called 7 shepherds, But it's not called Avram Rabbeinu, Moshe, Yitzchak Rabbeinu, they're called Avinu, because their traits that they had, Avram Avinu, kindness, Yitzchak, severity, Yaakov, glory, beauty and all that, that because they were the others, they gave it as an inheritance to every single Jew of all generations. But Moshe Rabbeinu, as the Rebbe, the teacher, what Moshe Rabbeinu's main function was, not only to teach the Jewish people Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu's main function was to connect the Jews to Hashem, internalizing the Emunah and Bitachon that every Jew has. Das, which is das, feeling elokus. It's not enough to know right and wrong. You have to feel right and wrong. Many people, he said, you know how many doctors do unhealthy things? You know how many moralists are immoral? You know how many lawmakers are doing everything illegal? I mean, just open the newspaper, right? I mean, that's all of Shalom. Just open the news, whatever. Because there's a difference between knowing something is wrong and feeling something is wrong. And Moshe Rabbeinu internalizes godliness in a way that every Jew feels it. That's much more than just knowing it. Okay, another thing is okay. After the Yam Suf in chapter 15, Pasuk 22. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna do one thing before that. In the middle of Kriyas Yam Suf, okay, in Pasuk Perek Tezvav, chapter 15, Pasuk Beis. Ozi v'zimis Yah means it's Hashem is my strength, Hashem is my praise. Vayihili lishua, he was for my salvation. And then it says like this: Zekeli van vehu, this is my God, and I will exalt him. Elokei avi, the God of my father, varei memenu, and I will also an expression of exalting. Okay, that means, and by the way, the Gemara says in this pasuk, when you say Zeh, this is my God, okay, this is my God, that means at the time the sea was split and the Jews walked across the sea, they saw, like we learned Pesach time, and that all the hidden worlds became revealed, the hidden worlds of Yam, which represents the hidden worlds, became revealed. The Jews saw, and the Gemara says, Rasa Shivcha Layam, the maidservant, which represents the lowest level of a Jew's understanding, more than the prophet Yechezkel ben Buzi, who saw the throne of Hashem, the whole throne of God that we read about in the Haftarah on the first day of Shavuos, everything that's going on in God's throne. The maidservant, at the time the sea was split, saw more godliness than the greatest of the prophets saw when he saw the throne of God. Okay? So you can imagine how much greatness of God that they saw. But there's an interesting shalah. The shalah says like this. He tears apart the words, Zekeli va'anveyu. He says like this, Zekeli. If a person says, this is my God, I'll explain in a second what it means. Then va'anvehu. Literally means I will exalt him. But anvehu, he says, is two words. Ani vahu. Me and him are together in one word. Elokei avi. I'll explain in a second what it means. Elokei avi, if somebody says, no, this is my father's God, then Aravamenu, God becomes aloof from me, becomes removed from me. There are many people, when they came to America after the war, they came what was called to the golden country. They thought gold was all over the place. So many people said, Judaism was good in Europe. America is different. America is different. You don't have to be so religious. You don't have to be everything. And the previous Rebbe's Yartzeit, this Yitzhvat, said that he's coming to America to prove America's not anders. America's not different. So the Shalach Kodesh says like this: if somebody says it's my God, it's connected with me, then Anvehu means me and him are one. we become united. If somebody says it's a Lokei Avi, it's my God, my father's God, that's not mine. It belongs to the older generation. Then out of Memenu means it will become a removed. Ram. It'll be removed, it'll be exalted, it won't be connected to you. So the Shalach Kodesh says it's very important for a person to realize that Zeh Keli, this is my God, meaning it has to be my God. It's not somebody else's Judaism, somebody else's Yiddishkeit, somebody else's mitzvah. It's my mitzvah, it's my Torah, it's my God. This is my God. Right? And there's a book, a famous book, This is My God. It has to be yours. It has to be ours. It can't be somebody, it can't be, good for the parents and it's not good enough for me. Let the old guys do it. And
this is a constant issue.
It's a constant issue. In fact, when it says Az Yashir, Yashir means then he will sing. Yashir in Hebrew means future tense. Grammatically, Rashi also quotes, it should have said Az Shor Moshe, then Moshe sang. Yashir means he will sing. Okay? So the Gemara learns from here, Mikan, and Rashi brings it down, this proves that there'll be a resurrection of the dead. Because the Pasuk says, Moshe Rabbeinu will sing. When's he going to sing? When Mashiach comes, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to sing again. That's why it doesn't say Oz Shod. The Balaturim says an interesting thing. Oz Yud Shir, Yashir is Yud Shir. The Balaturim says if you look through the whole Tanakh, the Jews sang songs to Hashem 9 times. Throughout history, 9 times. And he says the 10th time, Moshe Rabbeinu will sing with Mashiach when Mashiach comes. And that's why it says, Oz Yud Shir, the 10th song will be Moshe B'nai Yisrael when Mashiach comes. The same thing, by the way, that Rambam says that how many paradumas, red heifers throughout history? So the Rambam says there are 9 red heifers in Jewish history, and the 10th red heifer, Mashiach is going to make when Mashiach comes. So this is the, 10 represents completeness of Yashir. It's better late than never, that's for sure. Oh, okay. Should only go to Simchas. So that's what it means, that Moshe Rabbeinu will, from there is a proof, Tchias HaMesim from the Torah. By the way, Mikan, it says that's the proof that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim in the Torah. Anyway, afterwards, after the whole thing, then it says in Perek Tezvav, chapter 15, Pasuk 22, it says like this, Vayas Moshe es Yisrael meyamsuf. Rashi says, what does it mean, Vayas Moshe? Moshe Rabbeinu forced the Jews to leave the Yamsuf. They didn't want to leave. Why? The Gemara says, when the Egyptians went to battle, it was weird then, they adorned all their animals with gold and silver and tons of, they used to adorn the animals. By Kriyas Yamsuf, when everything died, all the animals died, the Jews were busy getting the diamonds and the gold from the animals. And the Gemara says, Godel bizas hayam mi bizas Mitzrayim. They had more money by the Yamsuf, what they got, than what they left Egypt. And the Medrash says, everybody left Egypt. There wasn't a Jew that didn't go out of Egypt with 90 donkeys loaded with gold and silver. Okay? They had tons of money. Yet they come to the Yamsuf. The miracle is over. They were saved. All the Egyptians are dead. The animals are dead. And the Jews are busy collecting more, Jews, collecting more money. And Moshe Rabbeinu had to force him to leave the Yamsuf. So the Rebbe asked, it doesn't make sense. The Jews just saw this great level of godliness, right? The sea split. All the hidden worlds became revealed. They said, Zeh Keli Vanveil, this is my God. There were unbelievable, great miracles. They knew they were going to get the Torah right away. And Jews had so much money, they didn't know what to do with it. Why in the world were they busy collecting money that Moshe Rabbeinu had to force them to leave Mitzrayim? Why? To leave the Yam Suf. And the Rebbe explains all in a positive way. The Jews were told by Hashem, we want you to take from the Vishalu Ishmael, you should ask from your Egyptian neighbors, right? Give us all your money. Where did the Jews see where the money was? In the plague of darkness. The Jews had light. They walked into all the Egyptians' homes. They saw exactly where everything was. They took notes. And then they said, give us the gold in this room and that room. They said, what are you talking about? We saw it. It's there. So the Jews had a mission from Hashem to empty out Egypt from all their physical resources. Why? Last week we talked about the sparks that fell down from the world of Tehu, and 288 sparks fell down. And the Jews, Erev Rav Allah Itam, the Jews went out of Egypt to 202 sparks and were left with 86, which is a numerical value. We said that last week, right? About Elokim. The Jews were told by Hashem, I want you to elevate all the sparks of Egypt. We need to build a home for God, a Mishkan. We need elevating all of Egypt, all of the impurities of Egypt, evil of Egypt. We need to elevate it and make Hashem's home from that. So the Jews, when the sea was, after the miracle of the sea, the Jews said, we're not done yet. Hashem is giving us this money. Hashem wants us to take it. Moshe Rabbeinu said, enough is enough. What is the lesson? Hashem told him to do one thing, right? A mission. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is coming as Hashem's messenger and says, okay, enough of this, now move on. Jews, they have to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu knew what God told them. Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu knew that you have to empty out Egypt and elevate all the sparks of Kedusha. But now Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem's representative, says to the Jews, okay, mission accomplished, even though you think it wasn't accomplished, but mission is accomplished, now we have to move on. And Moshe Rabbeinu had to force the Jews to leave Kriyas Yamsuf, not because they were greedy, they wanted to elevate all the sparks of Kedusha. Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, done, mission accomplished, now let's move on. We have to move on to a much higher level, because now this is what we need to do.
Otherwise, they wanted to probably stay in like a state of spiritual la la land and not go do the hard work.
Spiritual la la land is very bad. Any la la land is bad.
No, but that's what it is.
Yeah. In other words, the lesson is,
Get to work.
no, what Moshe Rabbeinu says to do is what we need to do. In other words, like this. We said before the role of a Rebbe is to internalize the emunah of the Jewish person, right? That you should feel it. Okay. In Torah, the leaders of the community throughout Chumash are called Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the community. They're called the eyes of the community. It says in Sfarim, why are the Chachamim called the eyes of the community? Because they see what we don't see. They see what needs to be done now. In other words, like this. Generally speaking, a Jew has to keep Torah mitzvahs, right? A Jew has to keep Torah mitzvahs. That's the general rule. But there's certain times there has to be an emphasis on this versus an emphasis on that. Not, God forbid, not to keep mitzvahs. The Jews have to keep all mitzvahs. But a Rebbe, the Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the community, says yes. But this particular time now needs this mission to be emphasized. That doesn't mean you don't do the other mitzvahs. What is the emphasis on now? Who decides what should be the emphasis now? That is a tzaddik, a Rebbe, who can see what's going on upstairs, what's going on in those worlds and what needs to be done to combat the evil things that are going to happen or this and that. So that's what Moshe Rabbeinu is. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jews, yes, you were given a mission. But right now, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Right now, you're supposed to be moving on to get the Torah at Har Sinai. And that's the role of a Rebbe. That's why throughout history, different Jewish leaders demanded different things from the Jews. It wasn't that they didn't do, okay, don't do these mitzvahs now, only do. You always had to do mitzvahs. But the leaders were able to see what is necessary now for the world. What does the world need now? Because it's not the same world it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago. The world now means, and who knows that? Me and you don't know that. The Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the community that see this is what's needed now. So yes, first Moshe Rabbeinu says while you're in Egypt and at the beginning of the Yam Suf, get the money, elevate the sparks, we're going out to build Hashem's home. Now Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, now the mission is different and you have to do something else. Okay, earlier on, going back a little bit, I don't know why it's out of order, but Yud Dalid, Pasuk Chav Zayin. Okay. It says in the Pasuk like this. V'yet Moshe es Yodei Alayam. Okay, after the sea split, the Jews walked through, right? Then it says, V'yet Moshe es Yodei Alayam. Moshe Benu put his hand over the Yam again, and the Yam went back le'esonoi to its original strength. I mean, back to flowing again. And the Egyptians drowned, okay? So Rashi says the word esonoi is the word strength, okay? In fact, we learned when we were learning Tanya a long time ago, the first word of Tanya is Tanya. Why did Alter Rebbe start the first word of Tanya with Tanya? Because Tanya, Taf Nun Yud Aleph, is the same letters as the word Eitan, which means strength. There's a klipa in scholars that's called Eitan, and Tanya was Tanya, and the purpose of Tanya was to break that evil, because Tanya is the letters Eitan, which means strength. But the Gemara in Shabbos says a different word. The word Le'esanai means, if you switch around the letters, it means lit na'ai, to its condition. And the Gemara says like this, when Hashem created the world, listen to this, when Hashem created the world, Hashem made a condition with the Yam Suf that when the Jews will come there, you will split. And if you don't listen to that condition, you will not exist anymore. That's what Hashem made a condition. Le'isani is the words lit to na'oi, the Gemara says in Shabbos. That is Hashem made a condition with the Yam. So the Rebbe asks in a Sikha, why did Hashem have to make a condition? He's the boss. I mean, Hashem is the boss. He could do whatever he wants. Why does he have to make a condition? That's like, okay, I'm making a condition with you because if you don't listen to me, Hashem controlled the sea. Stop, go, flow, don't flow. Why does Hashem have to make conditions at the beginning of creations? It doesn't have Bechira. And not only that, we find another thing. It says, we say Friday night in Kiddush, Vayer Vayibaker, Yom Hashishi. It really should say Yom Shishi. Hashishi, the Medrash says, God made a condition at the beginning of creation that if the Jews accept Torah on the 6th of Sivan, Hashishi is the 6th day, 6th of Sivan, Hashem made a condition with the world, and he said like this, if the Jews will accept Torah on Shavuos, you will exist. And if the Jews don't accept Torah, there's no more world. It's funny that Hashem is making conditions with things that he made and he controls. So why are you making conditions for? Why are you making conditions? And the Rebbe explains that Hashem created nature. Hashem wants nature to be nature. Hashem, the Gemara says, Lo Ovid HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nisa L'Magana. Hashem doesn't do a miracle for no reason. Hashem doesn't do miracles. Why not? Because Hashem says, I created nature. I want nature to be nature. When I need miracles, I will do miracles. But right now, I need nature to be nature. God created it. And by the way, Chassidus explains, what is nature? Hashem hu Elokim. Right? The supernatural is Elokim. Chassidus explains, nature is just a constant miracle is called nature. What's nature? Nature's a miracle. You put a little seed in the ground, and out comes a tree. Or the way the moon and the sun and the functioning and childbearing. Just look at the miracles of nature. It's called Mother Nature. But it's really an unbelievable miracle. Why is it called nature? So Chassidus uses the terminology. A constant miracle is called nature. Can you imagine one day the sun will get up in the west and set in the east? Can you imagine what's going to happen? Or if it snows in LA, can you imagine the city will be closed for a year? Hashem doesn't want nature to be broken. So therefore, Hashem says, I want the sea flowing. I want the sea flowing. And Hashem says, but I want at certain times, nature itself demands that it should break nature as part of nature. So Hashem says, I'm making a condition with the sea. Okay? Of course, he's the boss. He can break nature whenever he wants. But Hashem doesn't want to break nature. He wants the condition to be within the bylaws, so to speak, of nature, that there will be a miracle when it happens. When it needs to be happening, Hashem will do a miracle. That's why it's interesting. Halachically, you're not allowed to do a mitzvah with miracles. There's a famous story with the Alter Rebbe. We also told this story many times. When the Alter Rebbe was being interrogated, Yutas Kislev, before he got released from prison. So the prison was on an island, and the interrogation, that they shouldn't run away, and the interrogation room was on the, back on the shore, right? So they used to ferry the prisoners back and forth. It was the month of Cheshvan, I guess, and the Alter Rebbe wanted to do Kiddush Levana. Okay, like this, he's in a prison cell. So now he had an opportunity. He's going on this boat, and he sees a moon. So he says to the guard, do me a favor, stop the boat. I want to do Kiddush Levana. The brach on the moon. The guy said to him, are you crazy? You're a prisoner. He's telling me what to do. So the Alter Rebbe didn't say anything. A minute later, the boat stopped. The Alter Rebbe said to the guard, listen to me. You see that I can stop the boat. Okay? You see I can do it. I'm asking you, I will restart the boat, and I'm asking you to stop the boat, that I can do Kiddush Levana. So the guy saw he had no choice. So the Rebbe asks on the story, why didn't he just do it when he stopped the boat? Because the answer is you don't do mitzvahs with miracles. Hashem wants miracles to be in the realm of nature. If the realm of nature demands something, that's the way it has to be. So Hashem had to make a condition, whether it's Matan Torah with the whole creation of the world, that it has to be bound by the laws of nature. And Kriyas Yamsuf, yeah, of course Hashem, whenever you want, could stop the sea and make it go again. But Hashem says, no, I want nature to realize God is in control of the nature. It's in the bylaws of nature that nature has to give into what Hashem wants it to do. Huh? Hanukkah, all the commentaries ask, how were they allowed to light with miracle oil? A lot of discussion on that. There's a lot of different answers. But all the commentaries ask by Hanukkah, it was miraculous oil. How did they do a mitzvah? The answer is they did a little bit each night. So it wasn't going to burn a whole night, but at least they had the mitzvah of lighting the menorah in a natural way. Now, they put in a little bit of oil instead of the whole jug. So, but that little bit was enough to do the mitzvah. And the miracle was that that burnt the whole night instead of an eighth of a night. But that's the same thing. So that's what he says. This is a condition Hashem wants not to break nature. Hashem says, I want you to function through nature because nature is a creation of Hashem. Okay, it's like one more thing. Okay, before we do the last thing, I want to mention, Mir Hashem, this Wednesday night, we're having a Farbrengen for Yud Shvat. Farbrengen will be in person and on Zoom. So we're having it in shul at 6 o'clock for men and women and kids. It'll be a dairy dinner, pizza, whatever, etc. And 7 o'clock LA time, we're going to start Farbrengen. It will be Zoomed, whoever wants to join the Zoom class at 7 LA time. And we'll be Farbrengen for Yud Shvat. Okay, one last thing. It says the man fell. Okay, all the way at the end of the Parsha, they had the man, and it says like this. The man fell from heaven. Okay, it's late. We'll just try to make it quick. The man fell from heaven. What was the bracha they made on the man? By the way, the Rishonim write, they couldn't make Hametzi Lechem and Aretz. No, they say Hametzi Lechem, no joke. The Rishonim write, on the man they made a bracha Hametzi Lechem and Hashemayim. Because it came from heaven. They couldn't say Mina Aretz. So that would, no, seriously, that was the bracha the Jews, if they made bracha, that was the bracha they made. But the man had dew at the bottom, the pasuk says, and then the man fell, and then they had a layer of dew on top of it. Which is, by the way, one of the reasons why we cover the chalas and Shabbos, not only because of the embarrassment with the wine, because the double challah is the man that fell double, and the man was actually covered with dew at the bottom, dew on top. Why was it covered with dew at the bottom and dew at top? The explanation is the man was a very lofty spiritual food that came from heaven. Okay, lechem abidim, the man is called the food of the strong ones. Many opinions say Moshe Rabbeinu ate the man in heaven. Whatever. It's questionable if he did or not. Whatever. Dew is super holy. It says in the Medrash, Hashem is going to resurrect the Jews by Tchias HaMesim. With what? Tal, with dew. When the Jews by Matan Torah fainted, when the first two commandments, when Hashem spoke, it says Hashem revived them, resurrected them with the dew that he's going to resurrect the dead with. Dew is a very lofty level. The Gemara says, it says in Chumash, and we say it in Shema every day. Im Shabaya Tishmu, it says, if you listen to mitzvahs, Hashem says, I'll give rain in the proper time. You'll have what you need. If you don't listen, I'm going to stop the rain, right? Rain is dependent. That's why if there's no rain, they would fast and everything. Dew, the Gemara says, Tal loy natzad. Dew never stops. Whether the Jews behave or don't behave, dew will always be. So Chassidus explains why. Chassidus and Kabbalah explain why. Because rain comes from a level of godliness that our behavior matters. We behave, you get it. You don't behave, you don't get it. It's like relationships, right? Friends. You're nice to each other, you're a friend. You're not nice, you're not a friend. Husbands and wives, or else, God forbid, they get divorced. Okay? There's a deeper relationship, a child and a parent, that whether the child is a good boy or bad boy, good girl, bad girl, they're not any more or less child. That relationship is an essential bond that's above behavior. Tal, dew, is a level of godliness that represents the connection with the Jew, whether you sin or not. It doesn't matter. And the man, that was that lofty food that came from heaven, that had a layer of dew above it and below it, because dew represents a super lofty level of godliness that is so deeply rooted between Hashem and the Jew that behavior doesn't matter. Okay, that's it for tonight. Anyway, Amir Tashem, Wednesday night will be a Fabrengen at 7 o'clock Zoom. If you want to come in person, you can come at 6 o'clock and eat a dairy dinner.
I will
Until
come.
then, have a great
I'm coming.
We should only hear good news. Take
Thank
care.
Thank you,
Amen.
Rabbi. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
I come.